Hey friends, editing Jacinta here. This video became so much longer than I thought it would be, so I think I'm actually going to have to split it into two parts and have all of the sketchbooking as part one and then all of the digital art on my iPad as part two. That leads me to my iPad. Now, pretty much all of my paid work comes from digital art because it gives me the most flexibility and the most freedom in making alts and adjusting things to suit a client's needs. That doesn't mean that I don't find traditional art exceptionally valuable, because I do. And the traditional art is far more of a place for me to explore my style and more of a place for me to break out of my traditional style and do things that are very different to what I typically share in my portfolio and online. And that is really intentional. I think if you are an artist building a portfolio and you're following a bit of a social media strategy and you have a really strong desire to gain commercial work, consistency in your execution is important. And every art director will tell you that, and every client will tell you that. They want to feel confident in what they're getting from you. And so a lot of my digital work, and you're about to see a whole bunch of it, is similar in style and is similar in level of refinement. And that is intentional. But the sketchbooks, the traditional sketchbooks, are my place to go and break out of that style and to do something a little bit different. So they serve different purposes, and that's why they look so different to each other. Okay, so let's get into this work. A year's or 6 months worth of work. I remember where I have to start from. So this was one of the first pieces I made, and I didn't even finish it. It was a picture of me in Japan, and I started drawing over the top, adding these little icons and elements. I was going to share it to social as a bit of like an introductory, this is me piece, but I never ended up doing that, so unfinished. This was a little GIF of photos of the moon that I made. Like I said, I will show you everything on here. This was a pattern that I developed digitally from one of my old sketchbooks. If you've watched my past sketchbook tour, the first one that I ever posted, you will see these artworks in there, and I turned this into a background and into a series of individual illustrations. Here we go, a vase. This is very, I think, atypical of my style that I post online. Although lately, I have been moving more towards a bit of an outline style instead of this flat vector graphic. It's not a vector, but that's the look, sort of a style. I've started bookbinding, and so this was me designing the cover art. I have a foil that I use with my Cricut, and I'll show you. This was how the book turned out. This one was the first bind I ever did, and so it is very, very bad. I have gotten much, much better, but this was me working through designing the art for that. Then I made these pieces, and this is custom typography that I developed for this particular piece, and I had 2 different colorways of that. Again, you'll see the little bunny appearing as well as the florals. Very typical iconography and symbolic sort of imagery that appears in my work. And then here was a swan landscape that I did not finish, that I probably should finish. So this was working in sketches, using just the standard Procreate brushes, the pencils. Oh, and then I did more bookbinding. And so you'll see the cover design here. I started to get much better in my bookbinding at this point. And then you'll also see I have the spine as well. And then I will also have the back of it somewhere. It might even be in the same file. And then here was the digital version. So yeah, I had the 2 colorways, the green one, which was the background of my iPad, and then this one, I really like this colorway. Like I said, massive flop on social, but not everything is about that. This piece I made, I think it was around about February, and I had a couple different colorways of this as well. I think that they're all in the same file, but I was starting to get back into my groove with creating art. And if you've watched my social media reset video, or how I got 1.9 million views on Instagram after a break from social media, you'll hear me talking about the process and the progress that I made on these works. This one is just a blank canvas. And then for Lunar New Year, I made this little snake composition. Again, I've been really enjoying characterization and sort of having fun and making my work feel a little bit less serious than it potentially has in previous years. And I made a wallpaper version of that. And then I made a card of my dog, Peach, and this was painted. And I gave the original artwork away, which is why it's not in my sketchbook anymore. And then the stickers of that painting that I made, I never did anything with these stickers, but they were cute and I still have them actually. Maybe I should give them away in some orders or something. Oh, and then I went and saw Nosferatu in cinema and I was so inspired. So I decided to create a bit of a typography piece and looking at like the architecture. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed making this. Again, did not perform well on socials, but was a very nice segue to get back into creating. Same here, I'm obsessed with Lily Rose Depp. I think she's absolutely beautiful and I wanted to create a piece of art that sort of, I wanted to create a piece of art that sort of paid homage to her. And then this sketch, which I never did anything with, this was based on the anglerfish that swam up to the surface to see the light. I wanted to turn this into a traditional painting. Never ended up having time, but the story of it like legitimately made me cry. So I wanted to turn it into a piece of art. Again, with my bookbinding stuff, another book. This was my favorite bind to date. This was a jewel toned cover, so I wanted to create all of my own graphics for that as well. And then my next sketch, which I didn't finalize either, I've been trying to practice my faces a little bit more, especially I draw all of my faces the same way, so experimenting with different noses and sort of how facial structures work. This was a lot of fun. And then this one did really well on socials. I think that I talk about this again in like my social media strategy video, but having like a clear narrative or a clear message has really helped my work perform well by social media standards. And so I did 2 different color versions of this, but I did really like the textures in this and it felt, it's not letting me zoom in. I did really like the textures in this and it felt really autumnal and it felt really on theme with all of the stuff I was sketchbooking at that point in time. This work is a work I actually created last year, but I went and added the typography to it this year. This is a traditional, or like a mixed media, sort of traditional collage. So the background was created with watercolor and then the foreground is digital illustration that was printed out, cut up using a scalpel and then pasted back on top of the original painting. And then I went and added this lettering digitally. And then moving on, again, this was a traditionally painted piece. Oh my gosh, I can't even zoom in anymore. This was a traditionally painted piece on canvas, and then I went and added all of this line work and sort of these mushrooms digitally. So I was really enjoying mixing media. Again, flopped on social, but you know what, I feel like I'm expanding my range, and I also really enjoy how this piece looks, like the stylization of the characters. So it's a win in my book, personally. Another piece from last year that I went and added the typography to digitally. Again, same process. This was a traditionally painted background, digital illustration for the subject matter, which was cut out, like printed, cut out, pasted on top of the background, and then digital lettering added to it. This was the start of a a reel that I posted, and that has affirmations, like kind of unhinged affirmations, and I was working out the iconography here. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but I ended up turning it into, do I have the reel here? A reel that basically looks like this. Oh, I can't get rid of the 2 titles. A reel that basically looks like this. But I also turned these little mushrooms into a wallpaper for my very first patrons that joined before I had officially opened. I did like a pre-order, like pre-joining bonus. And so this is not the final wallpaper, but these mushrooms became the base of that wallpaper. And then I turned this artwork into a bit of a text affirmation piece. And I really like this typography. I think this is really, really fun. This was the start of a carousel, or sorry, the end of a carousel, a photo-based carousel, and I added all of the typography by hand in my iPad. I do a lot of my social media graphics this way. YouTube banners, YouTube titles. I don't think I ended up using this one, but I do very often make my own titles and make my own GIFs, animated GIFs on my iPad. Same, like just making animated stars here for YouTube. Blank canvas. This is one of the pieces I posted on Instagram as part of like my comeback series, and this did really well. I was trying to work out if I wanted florals in it, and I ended up going against it. And this became the final piece, and I'm really happy with this. I turned this into a sticker as well for my Patreon launch, and I just think it's so fun and it's so irreverent, but also kind of serious and like true. And then this was the sticker, just as a separate file. This was the reel from earlier when I was working out all of the little icons. And then I was making this meme starter pack, and I couldn't work out what style to use, but it's a whole bunch of my favorite things like iced coffee and Miffy and paints, the moon, and my Kindle. This was a super, super quick, sort of just an excerpt, like what I wanted to say to myself at a certain point in time. You know, those days when you just like don't want to get out of bed and everything feels way too heavy and everything feels like insurmountable. This was my little message to myself. This is a very old piece, and I can't remember why I duplicated it. I think I made this piece in like 2020, but it's using some of like my favorite like line work, and I'm a big fan of these gradients in the line work. It's something I still do now and I really enjoy. But yeah. These pieces, again, are not from this year, but I was playing around with different color schemes, so I duplicated it. I think I made this in like 2021 or 2022, but I was just messing around with different color schemes. I can't remember what color scheme I ended up posting. Again, making memes. I was really trying to, at this point, take social media, like I was taking it seriously in terms of a consistent posting schedule and experimenting with different formats, but I was trying to take the actual content quite unseriously. So this was also very true to me, but it was, yeah, a test to see if this sort of content would resonate with my audience. Spoiler alert, it didn't. And then this piece was my Patreon print when I first launched. This was what I was saying about the sun and moon characters making a really strong appearance, and they've just kept coming back, and you'll see in the Figma project in a little bit, they appear again. This was me making my Patreon icons, and then a little GIF of the moon. Oh, it plays. I didn't realize the iPad does that. Yeah, making a little GIF. And this was the second, so this is for my mail tier. Again, these like little characters, these little celestial characters appearing. This was the, since my Patreon is called the Moonlight Club, I wanted to visualize the actual place that we would hang out together. And so this is my little Moonlight Club treehouse, and this forms the banner art for my Patreon page. This was another reel and with affirmations that cycle through. Phone backgrounds for Patreon, different versions of it. And then I wanted to turn these to, I wanted to immortalize them on the grid. So this was the social media post of the same art and the print version of that artwork. Oh, and this was the bonus wallpaper that was given out to people who joined before my official opening. And then I make all of my promotional graphics for my Patreon in Procreate as well. I just find it really easy to use. So they are all there. And then there's the May version as well. And I'm about to make the June one because it's June 1 tomorrow. So I'll finally be able to share the rewards for that month. I made a little bingo sheet for my patrons. So the idea is you go on a walk and you see how many of these things you can find.
different color versions. I tend to just duplicate my documents because I like being able to compare them. So it means I have a lot of repeat documents. And then this was my wallpaper, tablet and phone wallpaper for that month. Stickers. Oh, and then this is, I might do a proper video on the Figma case study, but this was sketch concepts for my collaboration with Figma. And I had a few different options for them. They ended up going with this one, and this is the one with the little sun and moon characters in it again. And so I was so stoked. And then this was a concept I started and I just never finished. I make all of my header images for Patreon on my iPad as well, as you can see. And then these were little social media tiles for my stories, so I can put copy inside them, and they're all themed nicely. More sort of affirmation reels. They're so much fun to make. I really get a kick out of making them. And then when Figma came back and confirmed which concept they wanted to go with, I explored a whole bunch of different color variations of it. They ended up choosing this one in the end. And this was the final art for Figma. Oh, I'm also going to talk about making a font, but I've made 2 fonts now. And this was one of them. It's called The Wanderer, and this is based off of my handwriting. And so I use it in a lot of my artwork because it means I don't have to consistently letter everything from scratch. So this was just based off of how I write pretty normally, but obviously a bit neater than that. This is my frog, which became the sticker for my May patron rewards, and I just love how grumpy he is. I think he's super, super charming and super sweet. And you'll see the sticker. I wanted to remake my YouTube banner, so I drew this, but then I realized it was the wrong size, and so then I started trying to resize it, but then I wasn't happy with it, and so I still haven't finished it, and this is probably a reminder for me that I actually do need to finish it. I turned the Figma art into a wallpaper for them, which was available for download. I think it might still be. And then I turned that previous YouTube banner art into an end card, which you'll see on the end of all of my videos. I wanted to create this cute little bunny. I made this on the plane on the way to Malaysia. It's just fun. I just love cute little animals, you know? And then I made this one in Malaysia as well. Another little affirmation reel. I'm really enjoying these borders, and I could almost see this becoming the border of like an oracle or an affirmation deck, like the back of the card with like a little spot illustration in the middle. I think I might potentially do that actually. And then this is my fairy series, and so these become the coloring sheets that I showed you a little bit earlier. And so I currently have 5, but I think I'm actually going to make more. I have a list of other elements. So I've got fire, water, air, earth, and light, but I have a whole bunch of others that I'm going to make, I think. And then phone wallpaper, a bit of a ritual. This was the May ritual for Patreon. And then this is an old artwork, but I was turning it into the print for the month because it's one of the most popular artworks I've ever made on social. And so I've never sold it as a print. So that was the print for May. I was making new backing cards for my enamel pins. And so I did that here as well. And then I turned that into a reel. I drew this little moth. It's in the same sort of style as the bunny and the frog. I'm really enjoying that style, and I want to make more characters in that style. And then here, so you'll see these are the sketchbook spreads for my little asset packs that I've created. And I've turned a lot of them into digital pages, which will become like digital stickers, and they'll become digital assets that most people can purchase. And then these are my coloring sheets. So you can see them in all of their glory. I'm so happy with these. I really love how they turned out, and they're so much fun to fill in. So yeah, there's gonna be more of them very, very soon. This was a reel that I started drawing the icons for and then I didn't finish. And then I needed to make more assets for my YouTube screen, so I just created this little border based off of my existing elements. Lastly, but not least, I wanted to create some fan art of Throne of Glass, which is one of my favorite series. And so I created this stained glass window, again, like a slightly different style, but I think it still feels like me and like my work, with one of my favorite quotes, which is "You do not yield," in 2 different colorways. I wasn't sure which one I prefer. I'm still not sure which one I prefer, actually. And then I was making the packaging for the coloring set, and so that becomes this. Yeah, that was the final belly band. And then that is it. That is 6 months worth of art, digital and traditional. I hope that you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed being able to look back at all of the work that I've made this year, and it's actually way more than I thought it was. And so if this is 6 months worth of work, I am so excited to see what the next 6 months brings. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment. How is your relationship with sketchbooking? Because mine is very up and down, as you can see. Yeah, and I'd love to chat to you about it. Otherwise, that's it for me. Thank you very much. I will see you in the next video. Bye.